We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody, for showing up this evening. Begin the meeting by reviewing city licenses. You can see there that there's three. There's Green Country Home and Repair, LLC, out of Bartlesville, Oklahoma. John Bellmeyer, owner. Tidy White's Laundromat, 1908 West Main. Jeff Kane, owner. And Devil Doggett, 313 North Penn Avenue. Brandon Swartz is the owner. We have some applications that we're still receiving for the Park Board. We have 2 expiring terms. We'll receive applications for that until June 30th. And then the Tree Board has 1 expired term, and we will again take applications for it until June 30th. All right, with the consent agenda. Gentlemen, what is your pleasure this evening?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay.
I'd make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're ready now for presentations. Our first one is a presentation from City on a Hill. And there we go.
Remember item R.
That's it.
Item R.
Right. Thank you.
Hi.
You do the commission next.
So I was here last in probably August or September, and we have been serving Montgomery County residents since we've been open in September. We're an inpatient treatment facility.
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry. I'm Charity Costin with City on a Hill in Sedan, Kansas.
Okay.
So last year when I spoke to you guys, it was requested that I come earlier, and so we are requesting a portion of the liquor tax funds. We have benefited the Montgomery County area and City of Independence by doing our shopping here. We buy appliances here. We do a lot in this community, even though we're not in Montgomery County currently. We serve the women of this county. Since we've been open, we've served 15 Montgomery County residents. 7 of those were from Independence, and we just continue to get the referrals in. So we just feel we're a good addition to Independence and Montgomery County, so we were hoping to get considered for a portion of the liquor tax funds. So I think I sent you guys the statement of earnings for you guys to look at, and also profit and loss. So the statement of earnings is all of our facilities, Kansas-wide, Western Kansas, and our location included. And then the profit and loss is categorized by each of the facilities. So you can see that city and county funding are a big supporter for our facilities in general. I'm just getting started with requesting that, though. So.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah. You noted that you interact or work with Fort County Mental Health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a huge referral source. We also do Montgomery County Community Corrections, Independence, and Coffeyville. Hannah's House is a big referral source as well, and we also have sent some of our women, once they've completed our program, to participate in Hannah's House as well. So,
Well, Fort County has also requested funds, and they have a program. Mm-hmm. How is your program different than theirs, or how do you interact with them?
Fort County is more for mental health clients. They also do have a substance abuse program, so when our women are done, we are an inpatient treatment facility, so they come and stay with us for 28 to 45 days, depending on the severity of their drug addiction. From there, then they go back out into the community. If they're returning in this direction before doing reintegration, then we will connect them with 4 County to get mental health services and also outpatient treatment services.
I believe 4 County said they had their request for the funds was for treatment also. Is yours a different process, or are you similar?
It's similar, except the women come and live with us for 28 to 45 days. It's the highest level of care. So we treat 8 women at a time, and it's inpatient substance abuse. So it's for the women who have more severe drug addiction, IV drug use, more severe alcohol use, opiate addictions that can't be treated at an outpatient level of care. So they actually have to be kind of taken out of the factor for a while. They come and stay with us. And then we figure out where, if they need more time in a reintegration program, then we'll, figure out a place for them to go. Or if they're good enough to return to the community, then we send them back after they're done with us. That's when they are connected with 4 County to get those mental health services and outpatient substance abuse.
Okay. Thank you.
So they're just a lower level of care, basically. So
you serve women only, is that correct? Okay. Gary, any questions?
we also do have a one of our locations, Dr. Brenda has put together a curriculum for the school district. So if there is interest, something we can offer also is that we come over to your city or anywhere in the county that you guys have interest in and do a presentation for the schools, kind of a prevention. So we have that to offer as well.
Well, we're just starting into the budget process, so you know where we're at, and we have all these requests. We're going to have a series of meetings that are coming up for us, a special work session, as we work our way through the budget. So at that time, we'll take all these requests and
Okay.
make some
All right.
decisions. Okay.
So I will be in touch with you guys then. If you guys have any further questions, I did send my contact information, so you guys feel free to call me, email me, whatever you guys need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Presentation by Andrew Pitts on City Hall, Trinity HL, and on City Hall and Public Safety Feasibility Study and Master Plan.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome back.
Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you at the almost conclusion of this process. We have a little bit more still to go. I first want to thank the steering committee for their hard work over the last 4 months. It's really been a pleasure to working with them. They have been given a very challenging opportunity to work through many different information along the way, different options along the way. They've been very diligent. They've asked some good hard questions and have really worked together to come up with what ultimately is the best solution for the city going forward. So I do want to take a moment and applaud them for their effort, because I think that they've been a great service through this process. So what I would like to do this evening is, as we began this process, we really wanted to answer some questions along the way. And I'm going to walk through each of these questions. Feel free to ask questions you have at that time, and we can address questions at the end. And then the last component is ultimately the conclusions that has come out of this process from the steering committee and the consensus that's been built throughout the 4 months. So one of the first questions that we began to look at was, I don't get ahead of myself, is what is the condition of the existing facilities? So we looked at both the 1916 City Hall building and the temporary City Hall building. So if we begin to look at the 1916 City Hall building, it's about a 19,600 square foot, 3-story masonry and concrete structure. We've completed a historic conditions assessment, which is included within the report. From that, if renovation would occur at this building, there would be opportunities to take advantage of the historic tax credit program, and with that, the opportunity to potentially recover about $900,000 through that process. And so keep that in mind as we look at some of the costs going forward. That would help offset any of the construction costs and the project costs associated with that. There has been deterioration and damage due to water infiltration over many years, both at the roof, the exterior of the building, the basement foundation, windows, sills. From that has begun to cause some environmental issues on the interior of the building. We had 3 different studies completed as part of this process. We had a mold fungus report completed. We had a hazardous material that looked at asbestos, and we had a hazardous material that looked at lead. As we look at the mold, there is an elevated fungus level indicating mold within the building. That level has not yet risen to what the standard is that requires an independent company to come in and do remediation. So with that and controlling the water infiltration with any future project, and that being able to then, through the general construction renovation process, be able to remove and clean any of that mold that's in the building. There is asbestos that is present in the building that will have to be remediated by a licensed asbestos company that's licensed through the state of Kansas and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And so that process would need to go forward before any renovation would take place. There is also lead present in the building. The lead is regulated a little bit different than asbestos. That could be removed during normal construction operations. We would just need to inform the contractor that's completing that process the presence of that, and so they can take the appropriate measures as they're doing that work to protect their workers. We've also begun to look at some of the other items within the building. Some of the mechanical system is inadequate and is not code compliant. So any renovation that would need to occur would basically remove all of those systems from the building and completely replace the mechanical, the plumbing, and the electrical systems within it. It would also begin to address any of the energy efficiencies that we'd have to meet for the current life safety codes, and then also address any deficiencies with the Americans with Disabilities Act and be able to bring those up to speed with any renovation. As we look at the temporary facility, the temporary City Hall facility, it's about a 61,400 square foot, 3-story building. It is primarily steel and concrete structure. Obviously, it was built as a hospital. It has more of an open bay structure, and so it allows a little bit more flexibility in the potential renovation. The mechanical and the electrical systems are oversized for what a typical office use would be. It's obviously was sized for hospital use, and that has obviously created some energy usage issues, and there's been some recommendations included within the report of how that could potentially be remediated in the future. The central plant does not allow for easy separation of the spaces, and so if you want to begin to subdivide that, there would have to be additional work that would need to occur to begin to separate off spaces, and so if you wanted to meter or individually break out rents of certain areas from utilities, you'd have to complete that additional work. We began to look at what programs or departments should be included within the City Hall. The departments that were in City Hall prior to the moving out was the City Administration, Finance, City Clerk, Public Works, Utilities, Municipal Court, City Commission Chambers, Court Clerk, Housing, Information Technology, and in the public safety component, both the police and the fire and EMS. Those were the ones that we began to look at and we further developed into a program of spaces. So we met with each of the departments. We took a program that had previously been developed, used that as kind of a beginning to ask questions. We really asked the questions with the departments of how they do their work. Who do they meet with on a daily basis? How much staff are in those different departments? How many people are they meeting? How often do they meet? How does that need to occur? Some of the storage that goes along with that, and then also some of the specialty things that go along, obviously, with the public safety building. We began to build a program, which is ultimately the square footage that needs to go within that space. As you can see, there was a prior program, which is that left-hand column, which identified about 47,600 square feet. What we've identified is just shy of that, about 46,865 square feet. There's a bit of ups and downs between each of the departments. But at the end of the day, that prior program was not far off from what we see is a program that begins to meet your needs for now and then also begins to have your needs for going forward. We really looked at this as not a needs and a wants list from the staff, but really what does it need to operate the city on a daily basis and some of the factors that go along with that, and then give you the flexibility as things change. How do you begin to operate in the future? From that, we began to look at how different spaces would begin to lay out, and so we worked with adjacencies with the departments, making sure we understand who should be next to each other, who should be at the front door, how should the public interact with the different departments, how can we help improve staff security and still maintain a high level of customer service as we look at those different components. That then allowed us to build some of the options that you'll see here in a minute. We had some questions of how this program has varied from other options that have been developed over many years. We were provided with about half a dozen different concepts that have been developed over the last few years to how to solve the programs within the 1916 City Hall. Some of the big variances from what we see of those programs from what we're presenting today is, again, this is more of how we see the departments work. It's not fitting the departments into a space. So we really took a different approach to how that was. As we see some things before was how do we get all the departments into that existing building and make it work? We've looked at it from how should really the city department work. If we look at the police department, some of the highlights, and I'm not going to go through all this, we can go in a little bit more detail in the report. But for example, the dispatch in 911, as you move dispatch to the temporary city hall, the county also brought over dispatchers to that operation. So that's increased that footprint, but it's also given the city some backup and some relief. And so that if they have a lot of calls going on, the county and the city can help support each other along the way. And so there's some good cross-sharing of information. It allowed them to share information on an easier basis. And so that's, by moving them in, has had a benefit to the staff that operate within that space. If we look at the apparatus space, one of the benefits of moving all of your apparatus, your vehicles, into a single apparatus bay is through the city's looking of the city's insurance service office, the ISO rating. It's actually it decreased the commercial insurance rating for your downtown properties. There's actually been a benefit, along with some of their staffing and procedures along the way, there's been a benefit of now having all those vehicles in one location and under a single cover. And so we would recommend that you'd want to go back to that, wherever that ends up being, is a single operation for the fire and EMS in one location. So all the apparatus would remain together, as opposed to splitting them up how you were prior. Some of the other things, if you look at the fire and EMS, was some of the sleeping arrangements. A lot of dormitory was used prior. As we look at your staffing ratios and the increase of females on your staff, having more individual, whether they're single or double occupancy rooms, allows you to have a better flexibility of how that staff ratio can occur on a specific shift. So you're not limiting, depending on how large or small a dorm space is, or even the number of restrooms, being able to see how many males or females could be on a specific shift. It allows you to have more flexibility going forward with your staff. And then if we think about the commission chambers, if we wanted to move that space back into a city hall, a lot of the prior studies looked at utilizing the prior commission room, which really has only one exit out of it, and so it begins to limit the number of people that can be in that space. It really limits the security that can happen into that, and also some of the egress. And so we would recommend having a larger space, and so you could accommodate the technology you brought into here, and also allow the number of people that you want to have at different meetings. So there's just some of the things that we've highlighted along the way that we see as variations from the prior programs. We also began to look at a variety of options. And with these options, we discussed in great detail the pros and the cons associated with each of them with the steering committee. As you can see, there were 6 different options that were developed. The last one actually came out of some of our meetings with the steering committee. So we looked at renovation of the 1916 City Hall and a new public safety building that would be built on the lot across the street. We looked at the 1916 City Hall building for city administration, and in using the existing apparatus bay and having an addition, the temporary apparatus bay, have an addition for public safety being located over on that site. We looked at a phased renovation of the temporary City Hall. We looked at a remodel of just the City Hall, just spending a little bit less money on that. We looked at and compared it against what would cost to build a brand new facility somewhere on another site, yet to be determined as an option. And then we looked at having the 1960 City Hall building and an addition to that building for the public safety. In the end, what really came out of it was we developed all these pros and cons and kind of talked about what were some of the good and the bad of each of those different concepts. We talked about a lot of, should it be the 1916 City Hall? Should it be the temporary City Hall? What are the pros and cons with how the staff works? What are some of the pros and cons of those other intangible items? Where should City Hall be located within your community? And what is the perception if it's not downtown, or if it is downtown? What does that mean? Ultimately, a variation of option A was what was selected, and I'll show you a little bit more in here as we went forward. But that is a renovation of the 1916 City Hall building for the city administration and the departments I indicated, and then building a new public safety building on the parking lot that is to the north of the 1916 City Hall. With each of those options, we began to talk about how much does each of the options cost. The way I look at these costs is I'm using what we are seeing historically on similar types of buildings where we're renovating historic older buildings. How much are those projects costing? How much are they costing for building brand new public safety buildings? Where do we see cost escalating in the future? And some of those cost trends. And so we begin to break that down. There's two components as we look at the cost. There's the construction cost, and then there are project costs. So the construction cost is how much you're going to pay the contractor to actually do the work. So this is what it would cost to do the construction, the renovation of the 1916 City Hall and the new public safety building. And we've also factored in a contingency on top of those costs, just as costs begin to change and those what-ifs and unknowns as we look at the scope. The second component is the project, or sometimes called soft costs. So those are professional fees, the site survey. We factored in the hazardous abatement for the asbestos in that, geotechnical, testing during the construction. Will you buy new furniture or new equipment when you do this project? And then there's also an owner's contingency for those things that we just don't know yet that may come up along the way. So the total project cost that you see in there is a combination of both of those numbers as we go forward.
So in
Yes, sir.
in the report, Andy, there's cost for option A, B, and F, but I didn't see anything in there for the other options.
Thank you. So as the steering committee began to look at it, we really began to narrow down, and those were the three options we looked at more deeply. In the back of the report under the appendix, there are all the cost options and the breakdown of what those would be. So that's in the back end of your report, Mayor. But as the steering committee began to try to break down which options we should study further and really to begin to explore more, those were the three that rose to the top. So option A being the renovation with a new building across the street, F being a renovation with an addition to it, and then B being a renovation and then an addition to your temporary apparatus building.
So option A, option B, and option F would be then chronologically, or those would be?
We really didn't rank it. We really began to talk more about, and to begin to break it down, is where should City Hall be? So the city administration. And ultimately it was decided that, as you can see on those three options, all three of those have the 1916 City Hall building being where city administration and those departments are located. Then it became a discussion of where should the public safety building be? And is there a benefit to one or the other? Is there a cost benefit to each of those? And ultimately, the committee decided that the best option would have that building being located downtown, adjacent to the city hall, on that parking lot. But the question then became is what happens with parking in that same area? And so one of the things that we've discussed is trying to minimize that footprint, and I'll show you here in a second, minimize that footprint more so we can still maximize the parking in downtown, and then look at other options to make sure we're accommodating those parking spots that could potentially be lost.
Thanks.
We also began to look at other projects within the city, and so we began to think about this not just as the City Hall project, but in the context of all the things that the city could be considering going forward. We had worked with staff to kind of look at your capital improvement plan, and then kind of picked out of that larger components for each of the different departments, and talked with the committee about that. And as I presented to you at a prior meeting was kind of a statement that came out of it is the committee would recommend is we're outside funding, so enterprise funding that some of these are funded from, or matching grants or loans that some of these projects can be funded from, should be taken advantage of where at all possible. And then obviously we need to consider then, as we look at if we're funding this project, how are we funding it that still gives the city room to be able to do other projects in the future? And so we'll talk about that again here in a minute. We talked about how the project could be funded. So we met with the city's bond attorney, and he walked us through how cities get money. We talked about property tax. We talked about sales tax. We focused more on the sales tax avenue because you are at your max on what you could leverage from a sales tax within the city from what you have obligated now. We broke down what those different sales taxes are. As you see, there's a general purpose sales tax that's a 1%. That has no sunset associated with it. There was the education sales tax that was started in 2009 for 1%. That is broken into a 0.5%, and it has two different sunsets because that married up with prior sales tax that were coming off of your rolls. And so 1/2 cent ends in 2031, the other 1/2 cent ends in 2032. We also talked about the ADA infrastructure sales tax That's a 1% that was passed in 2012. That has a 10-year limit, as a 10-year sunset, so that'll sunset in 2022. So we talked about what could be some of the ideas of how we could fund things going forward. Obviously, under your charter ordinance number 11, the commission has a couple options that you could go forward to issue the debt. Then ultimately is how do we begin to pay that debt back? And you'll see a recommendation that we have of beginning to look at a debt study that may help give us some of those answers going forward. So at the end, our last meeting last week, we really sat down and kind of worked through the conclusions of what could we as a group come to consensus on to be able to present to the commission. And so these next 9 statements are the conclusions that the committee has come through this process. One being a long-term solution that addresses both today's and the future needs of the City of Independence is required for the City Hall and the Public Safety Department, and that doing nothing should not be a consideration. So those were the first things that we discussed. The third thing.
Wait, before you go on.
Yes, sir.
I'm always wondering about that word consensus. And in there I see you're careful to say a majority of the committee has reached consensus. So what exactly does that mean?
So I defined at the beginning of working with the steering committee that consensus is a couple different levels. Consensus is a yes, affirmative, we are all on board. Consensus is, yeah, I can get along with that. I may not be 100%. Or consensus is I may not fully agree, but I'm not going to stand in the way. And so,
but you say a majority of the committee has reached a consensus, not the committee has reached a consensus.
No,
I mean, 8 people have agreed and 7
no,
have
there
disagreed.
was at our meeting, and I would let the committee speak for themselves also, because I know many of them are here. But at that meeting, there was not a single negative comment to each of these at the end of the day. There were some that we had to discuss how the wording was to make sure that everybody agreed with that wording at the end. But at the end of the meeting, there was a head yes to all 9 of these statements going forward.
Wow. I'm blown away.
As I said, Commissioner, I mean, there were times that there was disagreements. There were times where the committee said, no, I can't go along with that yet. And so we talked about what is it that is preventing us from going one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And so that's where some of these things were built out of those conversations. And I think I was pleased, and I think most of them, I think they're pleased also with how, despite maybe our views going into it before, that we were looking at what ultimately is the best project going forward for the city.
Great. Okay, thank you.
But I encourage them, if they feel so inclined, to come up and speak if they desire.
That would be great.
Number 3, the project should utilize the 1916 City Hall through a complete renovation, thereby providing a modern office building that is safe, secure, and energy efficient while maintaining the historic characteristics and defining features of the building. And then those are the departments that should be included within that space. The public safety building will house the police department and the fire and EMS department and should be located on a portion of the public parking lot to the north of the 1916 City Hall. The building should be a multi-story to minimize the building footprint and maximizing the available parking. So again, this statement right here it comes out of our discussion that last night, the last night we were together, because parking was a big concern. Mm-hmm. Whether it is a reality or not, it will be a part of discussion moving forward if this is the plan that would move forward. And so there was discussion of how can we minimize that footprint, basically stacking more of the building on top of other things, so we can still maintain a majority of the parking, and then what are other opportunities within the downtown environment, whether that would be on-street parking. Up by the courthouse, there's diagonal parking that doesn't exist right now in front of City Hall. So can that be extended down the street, and so we can maximize the on-street parking? Or other parcels in the downtown area that the city could be able to develop other parking on. And so that was part of what that discussion became out of. Number 5, the temporary City Hall facility should be sold, providing the city with revenue to fund the renovation while supporting the overall economic development needs of the community. Number 6, the existing temporary apparatus bay should be reused to meet another city department's requirements or sold to another entity. Number 7, the project budget should not exceed $16 million. Again, the budget, that's a combination of both those soft costs, and the construction hard cost. This budget should fund the construction and other costs associated with the project. The project should explore efficiencies or program reductions that could result in cost savings while limiting the impact on the operation. And again, that 16 does not take into consideration if you go for the historic tax credits, that would lower that debt burden. If you're able to sell the temporary city hall building, that again would lower that debt burden. So that would be the high threshold of what the project could cost.
You mentioned a $900,000 figure on the tax credits.
Yes, sir.
Is that pretty firm? That's based on what you think it'll take to renovate that building?
So what we looked at would be, what would be the renovation costs of just inside the building, what we believe would be qualifying costs, which is about 80% usually, and then what the open tax credit market is getting. So then you go by that times the 20% of what the tax credit is, times usually, and right now it's actually a pretty good market, so it's a high 80s to low 90s on the dollar, that then comes up with that 900,000.
Okay.
So that's our conservative estimate of what that could be achieved. Always open to interpretation by the state of Kansas.
Of course.
By qualifying states.
So that's still funded after the project's completed to be sure that the historical tax credits that are issued meet the plans that were approved by. And you have to have those plans approved first, correct? Because that was the case with the middle school.
Correct. So you work with the State Historic Preservation Office. You get their opinion early on in the process, and so you can determine what that dollar is. But they review the end dollar amounts and scope to make sure you have completed that accordingly. So they don't issue the tax credits until that is complete. But there have been cases where companies have pre-purchased those tax credits based upon the assumption that they're going to be completed. And so there may be the opportunity where some of that funding could be up front as opposed to waiting to the end.
So the design work and the finished product then would include all those requirements to get the 900,000.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. Number 8, the City Commission should conduct a debt study to understand its current debt structure and potential funding surplus. Furthermore, the study should consider additional tax revenue scenarios to fund the additional debt to fund a City Hall project and other city capital improvement projects. It's my understanding that's actually ongoing. There is an RFP out for companies to potentially do a debt service study that could then begin to look at, is there any room within your current debt structure that could begin to fund any project, whether this or other city projects? And then how could you look at other funding sources going forward? Do you look at the sales tax that's going to expire in 2022? Do you begin to say, do we do a referendum that extends that to 2032, the next 10 years? And how do we begin to set up scenarios that could begin to fund, again, this project or other projects that would then not increase the overall debt burden or the burden onto the taxpayers? And then lastly, the City Commission should proceed with public town hall meetings to discuss the outcomes of the steering committee, the financing options, and the future City Hall project. That is a quick summary of a lot of pages that are in front of you. So I welcome any additional questions that you may have or anything you may have.
I'm personally very pleased to hear that the hazards in the building are not critical yet, have not reached the critical point where we have to bring in a hazmat team. However, if it takes us 2-3 years before we move forward, is it possible that we will become more critical and that will become a concern?
It is. I mean, one of the benefits is you've turned off the water source within the building. There does not appear to be significant water infiltration at this time. We'll need to continue to monitor that. I mean, the biggest issues when you think of mold is a water source, so some sort of, it's basically fuel, which is going to be your organics that are in the building, the water source, and then heat that makes the things grow. So actually, as that building, this is probably the bad time of year when it's hot and humid, there could be things that begin to occur.
Right.
Not heating it in the wintertime will actually help because you're not going to potentially increase the source of that growing.
Yeah.
But I can ask the company that's done the study, they may recommend prior to doing any work of just doing some quick samples to make sure we have not risen to a level if they believe that is necessary or not.
I think there were only 3 of the 15 samples in the report that indicated that it was slightly elevated. And since the building was steam heat, the the piping usually does have a little leakage, so that would add to the moisture problem. So without
Right.
operating the boiler in the wintertime, that would, Help
It'll
keep it
prevent
dry.
some of the problems
Yeah.
that you've had. Yes, sir.
but I think from the report, wasn't it, and it said there was a plan that showed where the locations, I didn't see it in the study.
I've got the full report that's got all the detail of where they've
Okay.
done those samples and everything, but that would have probably doubled the size of what's in front of you, and I
Yeah.
want to kill more trees. But that'll provide that to Kelly.
I'm very appreciative of your efforts and the efforts of
Thank
everyone
you.
on the committee. I'm still amazed that the consensus was to move forward with something that was a cost of $15 million. So that cost was realized early in the process, and people still said, this is what we need to do, this is the right thing to do.
Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure. I've had so
and
many
it's
people say, if
not-
you raise
yeah.
taxes one more penny, I'm leaving town. You know.
And I understand. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount of money. There's always opportunities for less cost as this project would be developed further. But again, I want to make sure I'm providing you with what we believe is the market right now and what we believe is really an all-inclusive cost going forward. I mean, you have an old building that needs quite a bit of work associated to it to really bring it up to today's standards. And there's still a lot of investigation that would need to be occurred, and so that's why I would hesitate to reduce that dollar until some of that work would be
So
undertaken.
you're comfortable that the dollar amounts are conservative enough, because when you get into those remodeling, there's who knows.
That's correct, and that's why I include contingencies in all the numbers, because there will be something that comes along that we just didn't foresee as you open up a wall and all of a sudden something's different than we thought. So you need to maintain that contingency as you do any construction project. But if you said we needed to do this project for $16 million, I would be comfortable that this project be completed for that.
And if you go back through the program, there is areas that you could still reduce square footage and reduce cost
Sure, Commissioner.
too, like you mentioned commission meeting room in City Hall. If we continue the commission meetings here, that square footage could be eliminated. And
The question, Commissioner, would be is where you want to hold municipal court.
Yeah.
Do you want to hold that here in this space? Does that want to be over there? Then where does the court clerk want to be? So there are some things that, yes, there are some give and takes that we can talk about to how can we potentially reduce the program without impact the overall operation of the space. One of the reductions that we did do is we looked at a larger apparatus bay initially, but they're currently working within the same size that we've programmed, and so we brought that down throughout the process to help reduce that overall cost. So we've already begun to think about what are some of the efficiencies that we could include within this to make sure we're not impacting the program going forward.
I think it's a good guideline, and what the main purpose of your study was to evaluate the two facilities and look at a direction to go. That you the steering committee has pointed a direction, and now the refining of it is the next phase to
That is
to
correct.
look. And as a high, the 16 million would do it, but just like the max limit on a credit card doesn't mean you always have to live at that end of it. You can
Yes,
live
sir. I appreciate that.
anywhere within it if you so desire. But it's answered. This is a multiple step process, and I think the first step is very detailed. That you've covered a lot of the aspects, the condition, the mold issue has clearly been defined for us now. Looking at program space, a reality of square footage, we've got that. It can go up, it can go down, still massage, but it's been. I feel it was a success in pointing a direction for us to consider with all facts, getting 14 people together to review the information. I really appreciate all their time, and that's one thing. Working with design and numbers, I take for granted that everybody understands that, and to come on board to learn the terminology and endure the the hours of numbers and space, and it was really, your time is really appreciated, and I think it's really gave us a good direction to consider.
How many times did you meet, Andy? A bunch.
There was probably 6, 7 meetings. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to look at you. 6 or 7 meetings.
Yeah. 6 meetings.
Yeah.
None of them.
All of them were.
None of them.
All of them were 2 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, and we used every minute of 2 hours. We tried to keep it to the 2 hours. I would say the majority of the group was there almost every time. If they weren't there, they reached out after the fact to see what they missed and got involved in the dialogue. Yeah.
Well, I too am very appreciative of everybody's time and effort, because this is quite a time commitment, and it's also it's not just the time that you're spending in meetings; it's the time that you do to prep for the meetings that's involved as well. So I really do thank all members of the committee that dedicated themselves to this effort, and like Leonard suggested, I'm really pleased with the outcome. That like Gary, it's nice that we could come to a consensus, because the consensus model is a higher standard than the random voting model. Can you address that just for a minute, so that?
Well, I told them from the beginning, Commissioner Mayor, that I didn't want blind ballots. I didn't want I told them if you're not saying anything, I'm taking that as you agree with the discussion that's going on. So silence is affirmation, and so the committee was. There were times where they were like, nope, I don't agree with that. And it might have been a shake of the head. It might have been a no, I don't agree with that. But they all made sure that when they had something they needed to speak about, they took that opportunity. And everybody respected the opinions of what other people said. And I think that's, from the beginning, we wanted to set that level of respect, that we may not all agree on things, but let's try to understand where we are. What are the things we don't agree about? What are the items that we can talk about? And then ultimately, can we then come together for a solution?
Other questions?
No, I just, seen this in other projects where the more information you give the committee, the unity can come together in a beneficial solution. And the open dialogue is really the key to that, everyone being comfortable to bring up their concerns and share, and you get a collaboration of ideas. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
It's quite a skill to be able to consensus build like that.
Do we have committee members that want to speak?
Yeah, was thinking about that. Is there any of the committee members like to address this? Feel free to come forward. I know you're not expecting that.
I think you can probably hear me. I have a teacher's voice. Do I have to come up?
Yeah, sorry. The folks watching on TV want to hear what you have to say.
I'm Val DeFever, and I was on the committee, and I made all but one meeting, I think. And I just wanted to say that this is one of the best committees I've ever worked on, and I've been on a number of committees. I think Andy did a wonderful job of pulling everything together for us. The city staff did a phenomenal job of providing us with all the information requested. We were encouraged to explore every possibility, and no matter how crazy it might sound. No doors were shut to us. I think everyone spoke at least once during every meeting, and we were courteous to them. We came together not knowing how well we would mesh, but we did a wonderful job of pulling together, and it became apparent about the fourth meeting that we had a lot of common ideas. And I think that helped us a lot. But it was because we listened well, and we exchanged ideas well. And there were a few times we stayed past the 2 hours because of that. But it was an excellent committee. It did a great job, and it was because of all the support we got and because of the leadership we had. And I appreciate being a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Other committee members? Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick statement. My name is Louis Isusi, and I was part of the committee. And that's right. We discussed a lot of ideas. And Andy gave a level of where you might fall at on consensus. You know, you're all in. you're kind of in, you agree with some of it, and, may not be happy with the cost factor, but we all agreed not to stand in the way of some type of consensus moving forward. So we all took that on as a responsibility. So there may be some that might have gritted their teeth in the end result. But these are just recommendations. These are for you gentlemen to take a look at, determine what our needs are, what we can realistically afford. And, my main concern was cost. I thought the cost was excessive. But, it's the projects are going to involve a lot of money. But that's for you gentlemen, the city manager, to fine-tune, to look at. And you may end up doing these in phases. You may end up doing the 1916 renovation and look at some other alternatives to buy some time till the financial status of the city becomes a little more clear, and then move ahead with other projects. This is not meant to go out and spend $16 million right now and let's get all this done. That would be nice if we had the money and we could do that. But realistically, that's where you gentlemen come in. These are just recommendations. You can modify them, you can agree with them, you can disagree with them, you can do whatever you want to with them. But that's how we got. I want to make sure people understood we had to come to some agreement to some sort. The ability to do nothing is not an option. You can see what doing nothing over decades has done to the condition of the 1916 City Hall. So we can't operate like we have in the past. Those days are over, gentlemen, and we need to change. And the sooner the better. Thank you.
Andy, anybody else have a comment from the committee before I ask my question? Nobody? Sure. The question I have is the $15 million, with the tax credits and stuff in there. Is that based upon if you start tomorrow and finish 18 months from now? Or does that have some sort of, because you brought up the phasing, which is something certainly we can look at. What happens in that scenario with cost, that type of thing?
So my caveat is these are 2018 dollars. If you asked me if it was going to be comfortable for the next year or so, I think that's fine. We see some increase in costs going before, but I think the market here is a little bit less than some of the other areas where it's beginning to increase faster. This is not going to be a project that happens overnight. You know that. Even if you said start today, which you're not, there's still about a 9-month design process associated with that, and then about a 14-month construction process. And so realistically, you're looking at the beginning of 2020 before you're moving into this project. And so if you begin to phase it, which obviously there's 2 phases that could occur very simply, in doing one now, it's not going to be any less expensive than it is if you built it today. The cost potentially could go up as you go forward by trying to phase that. And then how do you keep fire, police, EMS in the temporary? Can you sell it? How do you maintain it? Then you're paying for 2. So I think there's things you have to look at and do some kind of models to see if we phase it, what do those costs really mean? If we do it all at once, and then look at both your current operational costs and then also going forward.
Okay. That's good points right there. Any other comments by anybody? All right, the other question that's a part of this that we had discussed that's mentioned in the report is the public meeting part of it, Andy. And we certainly want to go through with that because with this, there's been some stuff in the media about it, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to attend some sort of informational session, some sort of dialogue with certainly the committee, certainly with us. How do you see that?
So I think, as we've thought about that and the committee talked about that, I think one of the biggest questions still going forward is the funding mechanism associated with that. And you could begin to hold some dialogues now, but I think until that is more solidified, I think that it'll be more beneficial once you have a better understanding of how you potentially could fund this project. So there may be the potential to begin to have some of that within the next month. If we're looking at the debt study, so you're probably a good 60 to 90 days away from understanding how that report comes out and what those funding options could be. So you may want to wait until that component is in place to really begin those in earnest, and then figure out what those next steps are going forward. So you could start today, Mayor, but I'm thinking to have more of those questions answered may be more beneficial
To
within those
include the
meetings.
funding source.
Yes.
Which I would agree. I think that's a very good approach.
Yeah, I mean, as everybody's agreed, it's a great idea until you have somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah. That's true. That spur any questions from either one of? Okay. So your recommendation, just to quickly summarize, is to get the financial information, what are the possibilities, hold the meetings. You'll be here,
Yes, sir.
and the committee will be here to,
I will be here.
you'll be
I don't know
here.
if I can commit the committee, but yes.
Yeah.
I encourage them to attend.
Yeah, we'd encourage them to attend. Okay, all right, thank you very much. And thank you again for everybody's efforts in this. This has been very good, very helpful. Certainly creates a master plan for us as we move forward, which is what our goal was all along, was create a master plan. And got a lot of things to think about in terms of infrastructure, how does it all work, how does it all tie together. Okay, so now we are ready for item, do we want to do item R now? That's, yeah. Huh? We're going to jump to item R because we have says another commitment. Thank you. The item R is an extra item that was added to the agenda, and it's to consider a request from the Independence Chamber of Commerce to co-sponsor an Independence Runs Back to School event at Riverside Park and Ralph Mitchell Zoo on October 1st, 2nd, and 4th. Or not October, August 1st, 2nd, and 4th.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you bumping me up a little bit, and thank you for approving the Veterans Day Parade on the consent agenda that will be November the 11th. We're very excited about putting that event together as well. So this idea I borrowed from my sister's school in Western Kansas, and they do a run back to school that's on a much larger scale than this one. So I scaled the idea way back, and there's 3 reasons why we'd like to do it as a way to kind of celebrate the fact that we're wrapping up summer, kicking off the fall season of the fall sports, and also to focus on health and wellness. So you all know that our health statistics are slightly poor, to say the least, in our county. And, I was thinking about those statistics today and thought, I can't make us all quit smoking or lose weight or doing some of the other things that we do that cause us to have poor health statistics. But Independence does do a lot of things that I think that we should be proud of, and some of those would be the Yana Julian Fun Run, the Blake Birdie Triathlon, the Niwala 5K, 10K runs that we do, the hiking and biking trails out at Elk City Park. The Chamber Committee, the Chamber Pride Committee is actually going to do a Spirit Run, which is a color run, on November the 11th to go along with the Veterans Day Parade in an effort to raise money for the landscaping project that will be at Penn and Chestnut that you've approved us to move forward on as well. So we're working to try to do lots of fun things to promote health and wellness in the community. So I need your help and your support for this event. So what I'm asking you to do is to co-sponsor the event so that we can block a few roads temporarily, and also to utilize the lone chief. So what would happen is on those dates that are listed on the plan, we would meet out at the stadium, and this is Independence runs back to school, and someday maybe it will be all of Independence running back to school, but right now it's the high school kids running back to school and the incoming freshmen. So all the student athletes will be meeting at the stadium, and we'll have a kickoff, and they're going to do a 2-mile fun run. And so you can see from the map up there where they're going to go throughout the park, and that's a very similar map to what we do for the Alzheimer's walk as well. So they'll leave the stadium, circle around by the fountain, come around through the oval, and go down the one-way. At the one-way entrance, we will have a spotter there who will put a blockade up so that no cars can go down through the one-way while the runners are down making their way through the one-way. About the Lone Chief is about a 1 mile stop. So we want, because it'll be hot, we want to be able to have them stop and take a water break, and that's what will happen at the Lone Chief, and that's why I'm asking for the use of that facility. I may or may not even be inside the facility, but that's a good landing spot. It's shaded. There's restrooms there, and it's halfway through the run. So after about a 5-minute break, they will take off again. They will make their way out through the one-way, and at 5th Street and the exit of the one-way, we'll have another spotter there that will, as soon as the runners come up, they will block 5th Street off, and they will block the entrance into the zoo by Monkey Island off so that the runners can come through the one-way and make their way into the zoo, back around to the stadium, and finish up. So at the point of 5th Street and the one-way exit, they'll call back to the spotter at the one-way entrance and open that back up, because the park is used a lot during the summer months. Tuesday night will be Mid-Continent Band. We'll be starting at 7 o'clock, so we should be through the park before everyone shows up for Mid-Continent Band. But the rides are going and people are participating in the park, so we want to be safe, but we also don't want to tie up the roads. And we don't expect it to take very long. It's not a race. It is a run. Anyway. So I need your sponsorship for the approval of the use of that building, and then permission to be able to block those roads for safety.
Okay. Questions? Gary? There? I don't have any questions. That was a really good idea.
Thank you.
I think it could be really good time for kids. Hopefully it won't be 150 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So water idea is really good. As far as midway point, having the water available is really good.
And we're going to have, just so everyone that's hearing about this event, the kids will be coming out for that. And when we blow the whistle and they start, they'll be getting a water break halfway through. But at the end, there will also be bananas, fruits, bananas, oranges, and apples, and granola bars, and more water for them. And then we're hoping to be able to get sponsorship for watermelon feed on the last day.
Okay. All right. Then I'd entertain any further questions again? All right. Then I would entertain a motion then to co-sponsor the Independence Runs Back to School event on August 1st, August 2nd, and August 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Here we
Thank
go.
you.
Another good event. Now, Dawn. Item I.
Well, there's very few people that I would agree to be preempted by, but Lisa would be one of them.
Okay.
223 West Main Street. I've talked to the realtor this week. There is a potential buyer, people looking at this property. We have adjourned this property before, seeing the ramifications for the city if we were to condemn it without giving it a chance to be sold. It'd be my recommendation to adjourn this for 60 days to let them work with the potential buyer to see if this property could be sold.
Do we do the hearing first?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're open a public hearing then for 223 West Main. We've heard the comments. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to that? Okay, hearing no comments, then we can close the hearing, and then we can just table this one till later. Would you agree?
Yes, that would be our recommendation.
Commissioners?
That would be
Yeah.
staff recommendation.
Agree.
Sounds good.
Adjourn.
Adjourn.
Adjourn. Okay.
Adjourn the public hearing for 60
Yeah,
days.
for 60 days. So we need a motion then to adjourn the hearing for 60 days.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we'll open a public hearing then for 725 North Penn.
Yes, I've had a chance to meet with the new owners. They have made considerable progress in working on the street, on this house, or diligently working on it. So again, I would recommend, staff recommendation, we adjourn for 60 days on this property.
That's great. Any owner here by any chance?
He was here earlier, but I don't know if he stayed.
Okay. Hearing no further comments, then we would close the hearing for 725 North Penn. We could then entertain a motion to delay or adjourn the hearing for 60 days. Could be a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Open the hearing then on 809 North 9th.
Yeah, there was an electrical fire here. It wasn't a big one. They have repaired the structure and have repaired the electrical. I did have, when I went there this week to look at it, I did have one question I wanted to review with the electrician on it. So I'm happy with the repairs that have been done to date. I would ask that we adjourn this for 30 days for me to have an opportunity to have my question with the electrician answered.
Okay.
Looked like they were really getting after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They've been working on it, and so they're
is
moving
good.
forward. Haven't had any problems, no difficulties with getting the repairs done or having the repairs that were done. So, but I just did have one little question on the
Yeah.
electrical issue.
Is the owner here by any chance? Would like to? All right. Not hearing further comments, then we would close the hearing. And so you'd recommend 30 days or 60?
30 days. It's just a small issue. We're almost done. I just want to get more clarification on it.
I'd recommend, or I'd make a motion then that we adjourn the hearing for 30 days, gather further information. There'd be a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1228 North 6th Street.
Right. It would be staff's recommendation that we adjourn this for 60 days. There was a fire in this. Matter of fact, fire 2 consecutive days, 2 separate fires. Work was going forward. They had a issue with the contractor. That's since been resolved. Work is now going forward again. After that's been resolved, it would be my recommendation that we adjourn the public hearing for 60 days to be
Is the
reviewed
owner
60 days
here
from now.
by any chance?
Representative for the mortgage companies here.
You're welcome to address the commission.
Good evening. My name is Clayton Volker. I'm an attorney, and I have been retained by Arvis Bank, who has an interest on the property by virtue of a note and mortgage signed by one Mallory Bird. This is the second time I've been in front of this commission. The previous time being back in late April, the last time this property was subject of an open hearing, or public hearing, rather.
It just gets better and better every time you come. Yeah.
So I guess I'd like to start by just taking a brief moment to restate what I said that evening. And despite the public perception of banks, my client is very interested in trying to maintain this property and maintain its interest, obviously, because that's what it cares about the most. And they feel that the best way to do that is to repair this property. And I don't say that, like I said, to try and drum up sympathy for a bank, because that would be a fool's errand, because a bank is a bank. But it's more of a matter of practicality. If for some reason this property wasn't repaired, that's just more time and expense to the bank to trying to maintain that interest, and potentially more lawsuits, and then obviously paying attorneys and things that they would like to avoid. So ideally, they would just like to repair this property and get the borrower back in it. And Mr. Cushing alluded to this, but there was a minor dispute earlier this year in the time since the last hearing between Mrs. Bird and the original contractor. Simplest way to state it is they basically had a disagreement on what the terms of their initial agreement was. This was very discouraging to someone like myself, whose sole job is to make sure this property is repaired. But thankfully for our purposes here, those two parties agreed to resolve that dispute independently of this process. And Ms. Bird has identified and hired another contractor who's already started and will continue work on this property. So it's the opinion of my client, myself, Mrs. Bird, and I don't want to speak for Don, but I think everyone feels good about where this is heading, and we do think the repair work will be complete on the property. While I'm here, it's worth bringing up that a subcontractor was hired by the original contractor before this dispute arose, and that for electrical work, and this electrician has since completed all of that work and has been paid by my client. It's probably also worth noting that, so back when I first appeared, I discussed the process of filing insurance claims and getting the money and how it was dispersed to the various parties. my client withheld some of that money as a means of incentive to try and incentivize whoever is working on the property to finish that work. And then once it's done, they're going to disperse what money they have left in their reserve account to the contractor. So we're hoping that with the second contractor and the money that hasn't been paid yet, that'll kind of combine to get this resolved sooner rather than later. I guess finally, there's there's various parties that have an interest in repairing this property that want to see it repaired. So I think that's worth considering, in my humble opinion, when trying to determine how to move forward. So to kind of echo Mr. Cushing's recommendation, I would request that this matter is adjourned for 60 days and then taken up again in a couple months. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And so you're saying 60 days, Don? Is that what your recommendation is?
Yes, 60 days. I think 60 days should get us
Okay.
close to having this completed.
Could adjourn the hearing for 1228 North 6th then. Entertain a motion that we adjourn the hearing for 60 days.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's really nice to have 4 properties where we don't have to go through the condemnation process.
Yeah, it's great to see people
It's wonderful
working to get them
see
done.
people stepping to the plate here. 'Cause we really don't want to condemn
No,
properties.
we don't want to do that. I got enough to keep me busy.
Okay, item J is consider rescinding condemnation action on the following properties. The first one is 404 North 4th.
Yep. Structure's been taken out, and
Yeah.
so
Not much to talk about there, is there?
No.
So I'd entertain a motion then that we rescind the condemnation action for 404 North 4th.
So moved.
Or it's a resolution rescinding the condemnation action. Okay. So move. Second, then.
Yes, I'll second the motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next property is 1009 North 17th Place.
it's staff recommendation that we table this at this time. In visiting, when this was taken out, I thought I was doing something that made sense, but we need to revisit this with the concrete that's still there. So we want to table this at this time. So we're not going to ask that this be rescinded at this time.
I have a question. I should have brought it up on the demolition permit. It references section 5-507. Is that a current number? I looked through and it seemed that the demolition is in a different section now.
I think you're correct. I think that may reference a prior, something may have changed on that. So that's probably something we need to look on the permit itself.
Yeah, and actually look at the ordinance. When I looked at the one, I forgot I sent an email. I think it's in Article 8 or Section 8. I think it reads that the houses or whatever's removed is to leave the site in a finished condition. It's very vague, but it doesn't mention a case like the driveway and the garage slab. So if you read it and everything is fine graded, I'm not for sure if that could be a argument that the drive should be removed or
Right.
should
We need to
remain.
table so I get some clarification
Yeah.
on how the lot's going to be used and disposed of. So when I met with the demolition contractor, I thought I was using common sense, but going back and looking at the ordinance, there needs to be something different done on that. So we want to table it at
And
this
we
time.
need to check the ordinance. The slab doesn't look like it's in that good a condition.
not.
Yeah.
But,
Bunch of cracks. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we can table this one.
Yeah.
All right. 1201 West Main Street.
Yeah, this was one, I think if you remember, I don't know, late November, early December, there was a fire next door that on a vacant structure that caught this structure on fire. And so they've taken, the owner's taken out that structure, so we would ask that the condemnation be rescinded on that.
Questions?
No.
I'd make a motion then that we adopt a resolution rescinding the condemnation action at 1201 West Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're a busy guy tonight, Don. Consider authorizing staff to set the date to receive bids for removal of the following previously condemned structures at the following locations. 300 South 14th Street.
We had a meeting set up to go over the repairs and the status of repairs. If you remember, several months ago, we were set to recommend that this be torn down, but the representative for the owner came and said that they would be working on it. He met me there and said that they don't have the time or the money or the interest at this time to try to rehabilitate that property, and recommend that we go ahead and go forward with removal.
Okay.
So it's staff recommendation that you authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for removal.
Is this where we're going to kind of bundle and go out for bid? Okay. Questions, Commissioner? Okay.
Now, you'll set the date on, some of them we've had the date that we've set.
Yeah.
This, just leave it broad.
Yeah, just
Okay.
authorize staff to set it. We have some others that he's pulled his message from that were previously authorized and want to bundle them.
I make a motion that we authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for the removal of 300 South 14th Street.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
800 South 6th Street.
Yeah, this is one that's been condemned for several months. There's been no work to rehabilitate it or to do anything on it, and have missed appointments set to go over the status of that. I don't know if there's anybody here for this property or not, or for the previous one. But
Oh, no one's here?
yeah, so it's our recommendation, since there has not been any work to move forward to rehabilitate it, that we recommend it for demolition. That you authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for removal. If I could read.
Would there be a motion?
I'll move that we authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for the removal of 800 South 6th.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1124 West Maple.
Yes, this is one that just keeps getting worse and worse as the days go by. Now the carport has completely fallen down. There has been no effort to make any repairs. There have been no effort to meet when the letters have gone out to meet to discuss possibility of repairs. So it's staff's recommendation that we authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for removal.
Questions? Okay, I'd make a motion then that we authorize staff to set a date to receive bids for removal. Would there be a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1207 North 8th Street.
Yeah, this is one that was previously condemned. Is there anybody here for this address either? This was previously condemned. Drive by it several times a week. Seen no activity in the house. When I go in there, there's no indication that anything's been done. There's been nobody's attended the meetings that have been, when letters have been sent out to discuss repairs. I did go in there previously when somebody was living there on a rental complaint, and I think I found close to 40 issues that were problems with that structure when somebody was living there. It's staff recommendation that we be authorized to set date to receive bids for removal on this property.
Questions? Entertain a motion then that we set date to receive bids for removal.
I make a motion that we authorize staff to set a date to receive bids for the removal of 1207 North 8th Street.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1304 West Myrtle.
Yeah, this is one where it obviously just keeps getting worse as time goes forward. Have never received any contact from anybody regarding repairs or meeting at the appointed times when we've sent out letters to meet to discuss that. It's staff's recommendation that we be authorized to set a date to receive bids for removal on this property.
Okay. Would there be a motion? Questions, anybody?
No.
Motion?
Anybody here for this property?
I move that we authorize staff to set the date to receive bids for removal of 1304 West Myrtle Street.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
I know we like to group these, but is there any way we can move forward on these quickly? Some of these seems like they've been here for a couple of years.
Yeah, we can. We have some that are ready. We can try to get. We can get probably 4 or 5 of them ready to go out for bid early next week, and then we can pull asbestos on the other ones and do those at a later time.
I move that we move on. I'd like to see some of these
Yeah.
gone.
Okay.
I'd agree.
All right.
Item L, consider bids received and authorizing the mayor to sign a contract and any other related documents regarding the Clink Chestnut to Oak resurfacing project. Sean?
We received bids on June 8th at City Hall, and we received one bid. The low bid was from Mission Construction in the amount of $469,340.95. It was slightly under our estimate. We've received KDOT's concurrence to award the bid, and we recommend that the bid be awarded to Mission Construction. You'll see the bid is broken out into total participating and then a non-participating item. For this project, the city has a grant that is 75% of participating cost or a maximum of $300,000. So of that total participating, that'll be approximately $300,000 KDOT grant, and then the remainder would be city funds.
There's just one bid. That's interesting.
Well,
'cause in the past we've had several.
asphalt is a problem in southeast Kansas. That's really the whole story. It is hard to get asphalt contractors. The subcontractor for Mission will be Heckert Construction, and they are just about the only asphalt contractor left in southeast Kansas that can bid this type of work.
And then with the bidding during the asphalt season is a little difficult to get interest.
It
We
is.
were really pressured on this to get it bid.
It is because we waited a while before the city proceeded with this project. That may have influenced that some, but it's still. We see this in other cities too. With earlier bids in the spring, they only received one bid on an asphalt project. So I don't know what the solution to that is, but that's where we're at. We do like to make sure we have other contractors holding plans. That's about the best we can do, is to get other asphalt contractors interested in the project, but we can't force them to bid it. So.
What about, there appears to be a water leak close to Woods Lumberyard in the east lane. There's always a hole and always water in it.
There's Terry. I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm not sure. Is that a water leak or is that subsurface water?
We're not sure. We can't get it to test, but we're going to go in and expose. There is a service line going through there that could be leaking. We can't get it test positive before, but we're going to take it out and see.
Yeah, it'd be
Nice to get that fixed.
be a shame to overlay and then have the same problem come up.
Yeah, we did at one point a cost estimate to move that line, and if I recall, it was something like $400,000. So it was just too big of an expense to
Yeah, it
undertake.
might be
at that
cheaper
time.
to fix it.
Well, it's this condition of the infrastructure. You could always justify replacing an 80-year-old line, but we just can't afford to do it all.
Yeah. So our portion is going to be approximately $175,000 on 74,338.
Correct.
Then I forgot our source of the funds. Is that from the 1/4% of the 1 cent special use sales tax, or where are we funding?
On this particular one?
Yeah.
I believe that's where we're going to take it from, wasn't that what was projected on?
No, we'd have to go back and look to verify.
Okay, we'll verify that.
Yeah, we got the geometric on Peter Pan, it bid.
Yeah, it's next on the agenda.
And there was a plan that you
And
had
we
put
can talk
together
about
that had this project and that project, where those funds were going to be taken from.
Yeah, I'll look at that. Now, the Peter Pan deal, that's where we were redoing those bonds. Am I stating that correctly, Kelly?
Well, there were some additional funds that were left that they
There
reallocated
was
some of
some,
that money. I know Jen had done a report on it previously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we're at the point on the Clink. We just need to award that project. So we've asked the commission to give the mayor the authority to sign the award
So
and
is
contract.
this the last of the Clink projects?
Well, we've applied. Well, the Clink project stopped, and it's got a new name now.
name, yeah.
And the city's applied for 3 other projects. We haven't, and one of those is like a Clink. We haven't heard if the city's been awarded funds on that yet, but we expect to within the next year or so. And that would be a 2019 or a 2020 project. So there's a gap because of problems with state funding that there won't be a Clink in 2018, but you could have one in 2019 or 2020.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, further questions?
No.
So I'd entertain a motion then that we award the bid to Michigan Construction and authorize the mayor to sign any related documentation. There'd be a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion or so moved.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Sean. We're ready for the next year.
This one is
Stay right there, yeah.
This
This
one
is for Peter Pan and Main Street intersection project.
Yes, this is a little different type of funding source, the GI or Geometric Improvement Project. So KDOT actually, we do the design and the inspection, but KDOT actually handles the bidding process. So that was bid in Topeka, and I think the commission has a list of bidders. The low bid was from B&B Bridge Company for $824,329. Our estimate was around $960,000, so it was a fair amount under the estimate. Both B&B Bridge and Mission Construction are basically remaining companies from the original Beechner Construction. They're offshoots of that one, a new generation. So they're quite capable of doing that project, and we've worked with them before. So we don't see a problem with that. And we're at the point that you need to authorize our inspection contract tonight, and that's why this is on the agenda. The award of the project is not on the agenda yet. It will be in 2 weeks, hopefully. We didn't know, but they contacted the city today. It's a little late to get everything on the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll get the bid tab later.
Yeah, July 13th packet.
Okay.
Yeah, this has a late start date of August 30th, so they're going to start construction pretty quick. Yes. So it's as you see, you're fairly a fair amount under the estimate. So right now about 140,000 under the estimate, and it has a
We
600.
haven't seen the numbers.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The low bid is for $824,329. Our estimate was $960,000, so you're right at $140,000 under the estimate. You have a $650,000 KDOT grant, and then the remainder was going to be city funds. So that $650,000 still remains. So that $140,000 reduction will be off city funds.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's slick. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, so then I would entertain a motion. Any further questions? I'd entertain a motion then that we approve the work estimate and authorize the mayor to sign any related documents. Would there be a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item is item N, and this one is to adopt the following ordinances prepared by the city attorney.
This is where I'm going to ask for the forbearance of the commission. Want to adjourn this for 60 days? Not 60, till the next commission meeting. Looking at this, there's a lot of, I've tried my best and with people we're working with to try to grasp all the moving parts with trying to change the code. Maybe there was a reason why we haven't tried to change the code in about the last 20 years. There's a lot of things to consider. There are some things that needed to be added that we maybe had thought we had done, but hadn't done them the right way and put it in the right place. And so we need to probably meet again one more time to make sure that we have everything in place. One of the things that's come to mind is the mechanical code and some different things that we need to put in place. So we would like to tweak and fine tune and present this to you on the 13th.
Well, could we get it all tweaked and then schedule? You know, every time it comes up, you got to go back and compare to find what's been changed.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd appreciate just looking at it once.
Yes.
And not twice or a third time. So,
I would agree.
Can we just say, get it ready? You know, it doesn't have to be pressured for next commission meeting, but just take time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had on the building trade ordinance or for regulating building trades, have any of the trades, particularly the smaller trades, been consulted or brought in to get their input? I know we got a plumbing board that gives input on the plumbing code, electrical on the electric code, but we don't have a heating and air or, you know, some of the ones, the smaller contractors, the impact of the ordinance on them. You know, I hate just putting out an ordinance that we haven't exposed it to them or got any feedback.
We'll do that.
Can you do that?
We haven't been as diligent with that as we could have, that's for sure.
But, you know, the codes from what I've looked at and used in the past, it is going to be good. Just, you know, take your time and
Yep, it's
it.
been a learning process.
Yeah.
So to follow up, is the latest edition the 2012 edition?
No, they're not. They're not all the latest editions. No.
Okay, so these are for us.
Right.
then.
These are for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the City of Independence is what I'm asking.
Right.
And the state, the
So-
fire marshal is using 2012 now too, so it's
Right.
pretty current with other
It'll be.
agencies too.
It will be compatible with with what most people are used to using. It's just not what we're using right now.
Because that's a good point. If we're going to do this, let's do it so that it's the most current edition so that it doesn't have to come up for another 5 years possibly.
Yep. 30 years.
Yeah,
30 years.
Yeah.
because you've expanded a lot of the codes from what we had before. The only one that hasn't been looked at is the life safety, the 101. But this is a big improvement from where we
We can only go up in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So no, what you're saying is well taken, and like I say, you know, this has been a learning experience. You take your knocks and you try to move on.
It's time consuming on top of what else you have to do, right?
It's a little time consuming.
So we'll table this, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
We're good? Okay, we'll table this until you're ready.
Yeah. Okay.
There's
Thank
no
you.
pressure on the next meeting or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item O is consider recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding text amendments to the zoning code, specifically Article 4, Section 403, and Article 8, Section 803.4, relating to banners.
The Planning Commission had a hearing to review these, and these are the changes that they have recommended. The changes are shown in bold, so you can see the difference between the old code and the current or the new code. And this is basically to allow like Neowalla and things to be on that North Penn, but it could be anywhere. It applies anywhere to the city. And those banners that hang over street right-of-ways. If you guys approve the community event, then it could be advertised.
Okay. So this is encompassing to where whomever could do it. Neowalla.
Yeah,
The
little house or
churches,
whatever else,
yeah.
as long as you guys endorse it.
Okay. Questions?
No.
No questions? All right. To entertain a motion then to authorize the mayor to sign the attached ordinances as prepared by the city attorney. I'd make that motion.
I'll second.
Do you second? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And now we're ready for reports. Right.
What pages you want?
I don't know.
Mike, any comment on the open records report?
Yeah, at the last meeting, you asked me to put together a report for 2016 and 2017 showing all the requests that have been made, who made them, how much time was taken. I got the report ready. Have you all had time to review those?
Okay. Questions, comments? Okay.
I think when we start putting the packet with the agenda, noticing some of them, the information, agreements, and some of those were in our packet that wasn't available to the public. I think by now releasing the packet with the agenda will help in the future get the information out. You know, a lot of them is clarification of those items and then additional information that I noticed from some of our discussion dealing with Building D, the operating expenses. You know, I think that the step of allowing the packet to go with the agenda will be an improvement on reducing some of the core requests. And I know at the league, a lot of the towns were doing that, and we've kind of lagged behind. But I think it's a good step. And then the videos have really been a big plus.
Yeah, putting the agenda packets on the website and for DVDs. Okay.
And they will be looking different now. The packets that were online were like the ones that I send you through the Adobe, but they're going to be looking more like this when they go out, go online. That will have the items and then the documents attached, and you can click on the documents and it brings the documents up. And so it's the next meeting. We've already got this agenda out there on the website that's already in this format. But the packets that you guys get will also be in this format. It'll all be at the same place. Starting at the next meeting.
We're going to have to click on the attachment to the item.
Well, so in other words, you're not using Adobe, is that what you're saying?
Well, we're trying to go to this new format. I mean, if you want me to still do an old one for you, I'm happy to do that. Yeah. But we're trying to make it a little bit easier to navigate, and for so that you're not looking through a 400-page document as one PDF. You can actually look at the item, and here's the attachment, and you click on it, and there it is. Wow. And you're not having to go back and forth. Even though I bookmark it, some people don't realize that it's bookmarked and they don't know how to use it. We're trying to make it more user-friendly.
Okay.
And we're going to have some more information that Craig has brought us on, summary recommendation, budget impact, suggested motions, and we'll list out the supporting documents. It's going to be a little bit of a change. But like I said, if you guys still want, I can still do the old ones if you want me to.
I like paper.
Yeah. You just have to show us how to work it.
Yeah.
I would be happy
As you notice, I like
to
paper.
do that. Yeah.
You notice this is here just to impress that I am in there.
Okay.
I don't use it, but paper and the keynote speaker at the last league conference said you remember quicker and more by writing. So you'll notice pencil, paper, notebook, tablet. I do charge at each meeting, but I really don't navigate through that. But I'll maybe look at it before emergency. We can get together and you can show me how the. Oh, I'm scared now, and I'm not afraid of anything except Charlotte.
Okay, report on city projects and other updates.
I wanted to just tell you and clarify one thing on the report, if I could.
Oh, okay.
There are a few sales that are highlighted yellow, and the reason those are, when I was going back to look at the request and the estimates, it was hard for me to tell exactly where she came up with that. So those that are highlighted yellow are my best estimations of how much time was spent on it.
Okay, that's fine. Great. Thanks for. What's that?
Thing for this item.
You do have a citizen request on this.
We can either do this now, or we could do it at commission comments or public concerns. Public concern. Yeah. All right. Report on city projects and other updates.
And it's just the minutes.
Okay. There's minutes from the Park Board, Planning Commission. Okay. We've taken care of item R. Commission comments. Gary, do you have any this evening?
I do not.
Hunter?
No, I don't have anything.
I don't have either. We are now ready for public concerns, and I have a request from Debbie Miller to talk about Cora.
My name is Debbie Miller.
Hang on, Debbie, just one more. Let me get the timer going. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
All things related to Kansas Open Record Act request are subject to open records. This includes all information about the requests themselves. Therefore, the city had the right to request and develop a report about open records request. However, it should have done so only after an open meeting by the full, with a discussion by the full commission, a motion that had been moved and seconded and passed by the majority of our elected officials. By having done so, all citizens would have been provided the due process and open government to which they are entitled. Considering such, any further actions the city takes on this report should follow due process guidelines that may also enable citizens to discern where each commissioner stands on open records. This was a valuable opportunity of which citizens were robbed at the last commission meeting. Had the city developed an accurate, complete, and truthful Cora report, which would have been helpful in matters such as evaluating the city's handling of Cora requests and determining the potential profits generated by them, then the report may have served some use. However, with its many inaccuracies, omissions, and misrepresentations, it may serve little purpose other than to have wasted Mr. Borowitz's time and our scarce tax dollars, misled citizens, and positioned the city for a variety of legal actions. There may be little doubt that the real goals of this report were twofold. First, to retaliate against a citizen that has used Cora records to run newspaper ads and make public comments about matters of taxpayer concerns which city leaders failed to disclose to taxpayers. Secondly, to set the table for the public shaming of that same citizens. There may be plenty of shame in this situation, but it does not rest at the feet of a citizen's exercising her right under the Cora. It appears unlikely that city leaders will change their policy, which seems to be one of continued lack of transparency, retaliation, and discrimination. However, every city leader and the city attorney, Jeff Chubb, should be aware that acts of retaliation and discrimination by entities such as the City of Independence, Kansas, blatantly violate the First and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. As such, it is difficult to understand why they have been oft-used weapons of this city government against some members of its loyal oppositions. Citizens can only hope that once City Manager Whitehead gets a firm grip on all things city and voters elect a new commissioner this fall, that their city government will become a transparent, honest, respectful, and law-abiding one. For many citizens, especially this one, that would be indeed a dream come true. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will have an executive session for non-elected personnel. I'd like for that to include the city clerk, Craig, and the 3 commissioners. It'll be 10 minutes in length. And I'd make a motion then that we go into executive session for 10 minutes for the purpose of non-elected personnel. Can we take a few minutes, just a minute or 2 break, so we can do what we need to do here?
So you want it 10 minutes plus a little break, or
Start the executive session after we take a little break, a couple minutes. Okay?
need a motion?
I made a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded. Then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll return in just a few minutes. All right, we are back in open session. There will be no further business. Therefore, I would entertain a motion then that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We can go home.
Just remember to make the motion second.